You know, the C64 Mini is a really cute retro computing device, but there are successors to this device called the C64 and now the VIC-20. And today what I want to talk about on RetroCombs is why those devices are quite possibly the best retro computing gifts you can give this holiday season. So I'm going to share with you the top 10 reasons that I believe the VIC-20 or the C64 is perfect for that retro computing fan on your holiday list. Before I share my top 10 reasons why, let's hear from our buddy Bill about the VIC-20.
Why buy just a video game from Atari or Intellivision? Invest in the wonder computer of the 1980s for under $300. The VIC-20. Unlike games, it has a real computer keyboard. With the VIC-20, the whole family can learn computing at home. Plays great games, too. Under $300, the wonder computer of the 1980s, the VIC-20.
Okay, if you watch the channel, you know that an open the box was coming and that had to be number one. But the great thing about this device and opening the box is it brings back those wonderful memories from the 1980s. I mean, just look at this thing, the VIC-20 color computer. You open it up, it looks exactly like the original VIC-20 I opened up somewhat 30 years ago. Oh my goodness, has it been that long? Check out this keyboard and this joystick. This is one retro looking joystick. We'll take a look at that joystick a little bit later. I'll open this up. We'll see what we have in this box. We have our power adapter. Wrong. This is for UK, but it doesn't matter because this has a USB power connector, which I can plug into any wall wart that provides USB power, so everything will be fine. Here's our HDMI cable. Nice to include that. Not included in an original VIC-20, that's for sure. The manual leaves a little bit desired. There is a downloadable manual you can grab. It's not quite as good as the original VIC-20, Commodore VIC-20 user's manual, but it's pretty good. And this is it. Look at this thing. It's beautiful. It feels about the same size, same shape, same weight. It's got USB ports though. We didn't have those on the original VIC-20 computer. We also have on the back, we have our power that I mentioned, HDMI port, so we can actually go to HDMI and another USB ports for a total of four USB ports. That's awesome. We need every one of those. And we'll talk about how to use those as we progress along. Very thrilled. I got number 0000121. What a great number. Glad to have that low number. As I mentioned earlier, the VIC-20 color computer just feels like a blast from the past from the 1980s. You can see it next to a +4. You can also see it next to the C64 Mini, which is also kind of a blast from the past, but in a pint-sized blast from the past. And of course, my Mega 65.
Oh, gnarly!
Okay, let's talk about this joystick. This is a mechanical key joystick. It sounds so good. It's got a great feel. Let's get these little plastic tabs off of here. But the joystick just has a good 1980s feel. And if you had a competition joystick from back in the day, it's going to feel really at home in your hands as you use it to play your games. On the end, we have a USB connector, and if you remember, the original VIC-20 had that 8-pin, but with this USB connector, you can also use this joystick with a modern computer, which is handy to have. If you happen to own the C64 Mini, you know the keyboard on that tiny thing doesn't work, and you have to go through and use this very painful virtual keyboard to enter anything. So if you're playing a text adventure such as this game here, you're not going to want to play for long. So imagine my excitement when we found out that there was a the C64 full size, but for me a the VIC-20 full size with a working keyboard. Let's take a look at that keyboard. You can see it here. Sounds a bit like the original. We'll compare that here in a minute, but boy, it feels good. It is a good keyboard. And when you consider the C64 Mini doesn't have a working keyboard, it is much appreciated. Here's the VIC-20 next to its older cousin, the Commodore VIC-20. And here's some sounds from both. We have the VIC-20 on the top. We have the original Commodore VIC-20 on the bottom. And you'll notice the sound of the keyboard is very, very similar. Very nice.
Two Commodores in one.
That's right. If you purchase the VIC-20 or the C64, you get both computers. You get a VIC-20 and a Commodore 64 or a C64 inside. And you can see here, I've turned on both modes and put those in a screen capture for you so that you can see what those look like. These are both screens from the VIC-20, the Commodore VIC-20 version on the left, the Commodore 64 version on the right. With the latest firmware of the VIC-20 and the C64, you get 64 titles. 64. I've heard that number before. And these are the titles you get. You get 29 titles for the VIC-20 and 35 titles for the C64. Let's take a look at a few of those titles. Our first one is the Jeff Minter Classic, Andy's Attacks, and this is a Defender clone for the VIC-20, if you can believe it, and it plays really well. Let's take a look at the game in play while you watch me die regularly. And often. Our next game is Galencia Mini, a Galaga clone, a very good Galaga clone, I might add. And here we are playing and shooting down our bees, and it's a very good version of that. This is for the Commodore 64, the C64. This is actually a homebrew game. This is a modern game that was developed beyond the original production of the Commodore computers. And you're not stuck with just those 64 games that come on the VIC-20. You can plug in a USB full of Commodore software and run that from the USB drive. We'll go ahead and take a look at a couple of games that I've downloaded here. And the first one is a little thing called Spaceship for the VIC-20. And this is a very rudimentary game, but I wanted you to see that you can even pull those simple programs down that you used to type for magazines, pull those down and load those on a USB and load those right up into your the VIC-20. Let's do something a little more modern. Let's do something called Super Mario Brothers. This is a complete rewrite of Super Mario Brothers for the C64, the Commodore 64, and it works well on our the VIC-20. And I suspect it would work just as well on the C64 as well as the C64 Mini. Man, that is hard to say over and over. But here we go. Here is Super Mario Brothers, reimagined, rewritten, recoded for the Commodore 64. And one of the things we learned quickly is I'm as bad at it now as I was when it first came out. And let's play one more program, Silent Night, to celebrate the season and listen to our Commodore VIC-20 play a wonderful rendition in 8-bit tunes of Silent Night. The great thing about these devices is that they come with firmware updates, adding additional games sometimes, or swapping out games, adding new features. And the C64 and the VIC-20 have gotten better over time. We're at firmware version 1.4.2. I'm not going to go through the process of updating firmware. If you'd like to see that, check out the link below to my fast load on updating the C64 Mini. The other thing I really appreciate about these devices is that they are hackable and modifiable. You would think maybe you're just kind of stuck with what comes in the guide, but no, there is a whole hobbyist guide to the C64 Mini. Check out this book. Check out the link to the book in the companion blog post that's linked down below in the video description. Lots of great tips and things that you can do with the C64 and the VIC-20 that you never thought you could do with them. Well, as you can see, I purchased this item, the VIC-20, for about $121, and I paid for $30 shipping to get it over the pond from the UK to the United States. So I spent about $151, but you know what? I think that even is a great value. So when these are actually available in the United States and you're paying for that shipping at $120, you need to run out and get one. Because if you look at eBay, you're going to spend anywhere from $150 to $200 for a VIC-20. Now that's just a VIC-20. If you want a Commodore 64 on top of that, you're going to spend another $150 to $200 or $300. And you may or may not get something that works when you place that order. Here, you know, at least you have a return policy and you'll have something that works. I really like the value proposition of the VIC-20. Here's a bonus for you. This thing works with modern HDMI monitors. If you purchased an original Commodore 64 VIC-20, you'd have to do some converting and get some conversion plugs and everything to get it to work. You just plug this in and it works. And it has stellar quality. We're looking at 720p, not 1080p, but you don't really need 1080p for what we're doing, which is recreating a pixel perfect display from a Commodore VIC-20 or Commodore 64. Here we have a pixel perfect display of the Commodore 64 game Galicia. And you'll see it's just beautiful, bright colors. Everything works well, good smooth, good response time from the joystick. No hiccups, feels original. And now let's go ahead and change that display to Pixel Perfect CRT. Let's say you like those old scan lines and you want to relive those days of the 80s. We can induce some scan lines into our 720p display and make it look like we're playing this in an arcade or on one of our original Commodore monitors. Let's go ahead and look at a North America 4x3 CRT. So if you were a 1980s arcade junkie like I was, this is how Galicia might have appeared back in the day on an arcade cabinet or on your CRT monitor in your home. There you have it, the top 10 reasons why the VIC-20 and the Commodore 64 should be at the top of your list if you have a retro computing fan on your holiday shopping list. I hope you enjoyed this episode. Be sure to check out my companion blog post where I will talk more about the VIC-20. I'll share all the links you need, and I'll also share additional tips and tricks that might make you or allow you to get even more fun out of the VIC-20. So as always, thank you for watching. Be sure and do all that stuff down at the bottom. Hit subscribe. Give me a thumbs up. Smash that thumbs up. Give me some comments. Let me know what you think. Did I miss a tip? Add that down below. Did I miss a top 10, 12, 11, 13 reason that this device should be? Or maybe you disagree. Maybe this is not the device for the retro computing fan. Would love to hear that in the comments. So that concludes this episode of Retro Combs. Retro Combs out.